Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 247.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because you are in for a treat. I have been trying to make this happen for quite some time. Now, you guys know that here we talk about all different forms of cash flow, whether it's online, offline, primarily real estate, because that's what I do. And there are many ways to skin the real estate cat. However, one of the most elusive cats to find, it's kind of like the Cheshire cat, if you will, is the mobile home cat. You got to find somebody who can help you and talk and is willing to share what they know about this particular asset inside the whole real estate thing. Because, you hear great things about them and you hear some not so great things about them, depending on who you're listening to. And I am so happy today that we have someone who has more than enough experience to help you and I unpack it and understand that maybe this is the way that you're going to play the real estate game. Today's guest is Jefferson Lilly. He is a part of Park Street Partners. Now, here's the interesting thing that I think. Just like many of us, he spent 7 years investing his own capital first, and then he spent some time helping other people, and now what he spends most of his time doing is running a fund that does the exact same thing. Again, you can see that same path of growth for every entrepreneur, especially in real estate, where we start off on our own. Maybe we help a few people, we teach them, we educate, we consult, and then we transition from that over to the really, 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 really big fun stuff. And I have him here today to help you and I understand, we'll call it the Cheshire cat of real estate investing, mobile home parks. Welcome, Jefferson Lilly. Jefferson, you there?
Well, thank you, Jay. I'm here, and that's probably the most creative intro I've ever had. So whatever I'm paying you, I'm doubling it. Thank you for that.
Wow. 2 times 0 is still 0. So this is awesome.
There we go.
But at the same time, you've got to admit, even in your own industry, there's not a lot of you guys running around saying, mobile home parks. It's not something you see on late night TV. There's not, no. It's just not commonly available, techniques and strategies. And I see them, I get it, but it's definitely not something I currently do.
Yes, right. This is a quirky little niche, and certainly compared to how many single-family homes there are out there, or how many apartment buildings, how many self-storage facilities. This is a relatively small niche. My best guess is that there might be 1,500 mobile home parks that change hands every year nationwide, and there would certainly be tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of houses in California alone that
right.
that change hands every year. So it's orders of magnitude smaller. But we'll get into this on the podcast. But for several reasons, it's really a great little. Really a great little niche that has some pretty significant benefits, I guess, which I like a lot better than apartment buildings or self-storage facilities or single-family houses, really any other real estate niche.
Perfect. This is going to be great because we've talked, some of you may remember when we talked to Mark Podolsky, and he was talking about how he likes land and using it, and that was the best cash flow. We've talked to people who do apartments. You guys know that we do apartments and cell towers and retail. This is going to be great to understand that. Now, however, before we get too far, I've got to ask you the first question that I tend to ask most of our guests so that we can get a sense of who Jefferson is. Because, see, today, I look at like today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So you've got, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, the Hulk, whatever. I look like entrepreneurs is like yesterday's superheroes because we have a lot in common. Occasionally, a superhero, they get dressed up, they wear special clothing, occasionally capes and tights, and maybe an entrepreneur just for fun will do the same. But they use their special skills.
You don't know what I'm wearing right now, Jay.
I'm glad this is now audio only.
Oh, audio only. Okay.
So, but you're getting my point is that we use our special skills to help other people out of their own mess. That's like the story of a superhero's life, right? However, just like a superhero, before, Peter Parker was Spider-Man, he was, out there, he's working as a reporter, doing his thing, maybe trying to go to college and learn some stuff. He was just a normal guy. It just says that he has an origin story. And, before, you were, featured in the New York Times, Bloomberg, Real Money television show, and you were doing all of this, what we want to know is, who is Jefferson Lilly?
That's a deep question. I am a family man. Got a wife and now 2 kids. Second kid just a little over 2 weeks ago.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's almost like a New Year's gift right there.
Yeah, real close. December 27th, our little Gordon was born.
Wow.
And then he's got a 21-month older brother, Alistair, and it's just been a joy, raising Alistair and now getting to do it all over again or start it all over again with Gordon. And they seem to get along well. Alistair's kind of. Yeah, so far. Right. So, anyway, yeah, so we have high hopes that they become best buddies. They're 21 months apart, and again, hopefully, much rather see them as best buddies than rivals or worst enemies. So,
we'll take the over under on that one in a couple of years and see how it goes.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, so that's, I like the flexibility of real estate in this niche because it gives me time to spend time with my family. I spend usually at least a couple days a week just with my kids. My wife will work those 2 days, but the other days she's home. And again, and then the other days when she's home with the kids, then I'm working. And, it gives us time to spend a lot of time with our kids. We're blessed that, we don't both have to work 40, 50 hour a week jobs and, put our kids in daycare. So that's kind of what's important to us is family and really building a lifestyle that enables us to spend time with our kids.
Excellent. So was real estate the first career choice for you?
Oh, no. So yeah, I got out of college, and went, basically I spent most of my 20s working in finance / financial analysis. Basically, I was the guy behind the spreadsheet for most of my 20s. I worked in venture capital as an analyst for a couple of years, worked for a couple of years at a consulting firm called Bain and Company, and spent some time then being a financial analyst for Viacom, a large media and entertainment company. Mm-hmm. I went to business school, came out of business school at age 30 and transitioned from being the guy behind the spreadsheet to being the guy with the expense account. I got into sales and worked out here in the San Francisco Bay Area in Silicon Valley, worked in various sales capacities with 3 different startups. A couple of those got bought. One of them didn't. It's probably not the worst batting average for the way startups tend to go in Silicon Valley. But anyway, and so then by my late 30s, as I was into that third startup, Then I just started thinking about transitioning some of my personal assets out of the stock market and buying real estate. And I thought, frankly, that I'd buy an apartment complex because I figured, I'd always lived in a house or an apartment building. I should stay within my circle of competence. I should buy probably an apartment building. And if it's a little beat up, I figured I'd fix it up and, improve the kitchens, the roofs, the plumbing, what have you, make it better for tenants, bump the rents for me. Everybody wins. And just in looking around under multifamily properties on sites like LoopNet, I would see, this was not in the Bay Area, but I knew I'd be looking in the Midwest for better cash flow. I'd be looking in like Des Moines, Iowa, under multifamily, there'd be 99 apartment buildings at, an 8.5 cap rate. Which basically means yield, earning 8.5% return on your money. And then there'd be, mobile home park at like 10 cap or 11 cap. And of course I thought, well, that's absurd. I'm not buying a flippin' mobile home park. That would be crazy. And I'd delete the search result and I'd go back on LoopNet the next night and I'd look in, Dallas, Texas or Omaha, Nebraska. And I kept getting hit over the head again and again that there was this 1 in 100 multifamily niche, the mobile home parks that kept coming up that seemed to yield 2, 3, even 400 basis points more, much higher yield. So anyway, I think I was age 39. I bought my first park. I got educated about the space, took about a year. I wasn't looking really full time. I did kind of take my time, but I took a year basically to get educated about this niche and to find my first park and close on it. And even then, I kept my day job at that third high-tech startup for about another year overlap. And at the end of that year, I could see that my startup, frankly, wasn't doing that well. I think it was on its Series J round of financing. As you know, Jay,
Wow,
J is the 10th letter of the alphabet. So this was a company that was just perennially not profitable. Anyway, it was not doing well. And I could see that my lowly mobile home park out in Oklahoma City was where I bought my first one. I could see that it was doing reasonably well. I was putting no time or money into it, and it was doing reasonably well. So I transitioned and decided to do it full time, and that led, really again full-time time and some more money committed into that deal to improve it. But that led then to me doing some consulting for a couple years for some high net worth families that were either already mobile home park owners or wanted to be mobile home park owners. I don't consult anymore, but I did. That sort of helped me, again, provide an income for a couple of years. I then bought my second mobile home park, which also was out in the Oklahoma City area. And then starting not quite 3 years ago, I formed our partnership, the Park Street Partners partnership with Brad Johnson. And we have now we've now raised money both deal by deal and in our fund, our acquisition fund. So we've bought 8 other properties. I've still got my first 2. We've got 8 in our partnership. We've got 2 others under contract right now. As of we're now January of 2016. We've got 2 others under contract. We expect to close, I think, in early first half of March. And we've got still a couple $1 million in the bank that we'll be looking to invest in probably 3 or 4 other properties, basically over the next 3 or 4 months. And then we'll open up our 2016 fund and do it all over again.
Wash, rinse, and repeat.
And repeat. Exactly. Yeah, this is a business that has not changed a whole lot. The business really came into existence after World War II. So it's very different than, Silicon Valley and tech in general, whether it's software or devices or services, whatever you're doing in tech, you better start looking for a job as soon as you get one because, the business changes so fast, right?
Well, hold on. I'm imagining that I can't imagine if there is any sort of tech involved in a mobile home park.
Not a great deal. Yeah. So this is a business that's very stable. So you can kind of wash, rinse, repeat because it doesn't change. Like the way you find a park, the way you hire a manager, the way you manage the park and do the accounting, doesn't change with anywhere near the rapidity that, Silicon Valley and tech startups do. We do make fairly good use of technology. It's an enabler for us. We use Dropbox. Our managers will, scan a lease, upload it into Dropbox. We'll share it. We and our accountants, for instance, all share, again, documents and rent rolls through things like Dropbox. We're, of course, emailing and texting. And we do, we run all our websites actually off Squarespace. So we make use of tech, but the business is not fundamentally driven by technology. It helps us scale and do it a bit better. But again, this has been a business that's been substantially in its current form really since World War II, when GIs started buying surplus trailers that they had been living in, housed on some army bases, and started moving those into trailer courts and actually living in them full time.
Right. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to jump back to because one, just a vocabulary thing, just to make sure that nobody is left behind. I know what you meant. I just want to make sure everyone else knows what a basis point is.
Oh, okay, sure. So 100 basis points make up 1%. So the way to think about it is, if you're looking at a mobile home park and one of them is at a 9 cap rate, that means, again, you would get a 9% rate of return on your money if you paid all cash, no debt. But if another park was priced 100 basis points higher, it would be at a 10 cap. 9 plus 1 is 10. So that's basically what basis points mean, because sometimes people can get confused when you always just say percent. Oh, this park is yielding, 3% more. It wouldn't be clear if you were talking about a park yielding, 7% versus 10,
right?
Or 7% versus whatever is 3% more, 7.21% or something.
Right.
Anyway, so that's what it is. I'll try and keep it simple, but in general, the parks we buy, if we didn't buy them with leverage, if we just paid all cash, we'd earn about 10% return on our money, and we do typically buy them with bank debt, and so we might get upwards of 30-something% rate of return on our money. And I'm sure we'll get into that as the podcast progresses.
Absolutely. And there's a couple of things that I just want to, because we went a little fast, which is good because it tells us what your eye was clearly on the future from the beginning, Series J. I think that's actually funny. But there's always this transition moment. Like just, when you look at a superhero, there's this transition moment where they realize, hey, I've got something great here. Like you were talking about with the park. But then there comes this moment where you go, all right, I'm going to go do this only. Talk to us about that process and how you managed to change to become that person.
I remember as I was leaving that last startup, another competitor was trying to recruit me. And so I did go in for a job interview, and they were laying out, substantially the same job and compensation and everything as what I had been doing. And I just remember sitting in the interview just thinking, my real estate's doing reasonably well. I think it can do probably almost a doubling if I really put some sweat equity and some capital into it. I thought I could double it in about a year and a half. And I just thought, kind of had this epiphany. I thought, and even if that doesn't work, I can always come back and interview with this gentleman in a year and get this job then, or something similar, even if it wasn't this exact company, So that was it. It was sitting in that job interview, and again, just thinking like I can get this later, but who knows what I can do with my park, with my real estate. Let me go try that for give it a year and just see. I'll be fine. Again, I'd already owned it for a year. I was already cash flowing reasonably well out of it. So that was kind of my epiphany moment when I decided to do real estate full time for at least that first year, and then it just kind of took off from there. And again, one thing led to another, to the consulting, to the second park, and now to the partnership. It's taken on a life of its own. So I will probably never go back and work in high tech for
okay,
for
so
stock
you're done with
options
that.
again.
You're going to let that go, right?
I think so. We're 9 years post Silicon Valley.
Okay,
now,
just
so,
making sure that there wasn't, some still indecision lingering
no.
in that waste. But I think your path, I hear this so frequently. I mean, we get involved in real estate for our own reasons, and then, we start doing some stuff and then we're like, "Oh, boom, look at this." And then all of a sudden people start asking, "Hey, can you show me can you help me?" And then it becomes something bigger and it becomes something bigger. And then eventually we end up with a fund. So I just see that happening over and over and over again. But there's an interesting question that I've got to ask, because when you were that first person looking for those apartment buildings, you said, "Why on earth would I ever buy a mobile home park?"
Right.
So
that's my thought.
what changed? What changed? Where did you go, "Oh, well, maybe they're not so bad"?
Yeah. So again, it took me several times getting hit over the head doing the search in, Peoria, Illinois, and Dallas and Omaha. And finally, I just thought, well, it is multifamily. I wasn't going to live in the apartment building anyway.
Right.
And if these things really yield that much more money, why don't I look into it? So I just started, looking around on the web, started reading books on the business, went to some conferences, just started talking to people. And I mean, certainly 9 out of 10 people would look at me like I had two heads when I'd sort of say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a mobile home park." But like 1 out of 10 people would say, "Oh, that's brilliant. My neighbor who lives in the huge house and takes all those, fancy vacations. I mean, he owns a mobile home park. You should talk to him." I had one guy from my church who literally said, "Hey, my dad used to own one, and that was what sent our entire family to Europe every summer for a nice long vacation. Talk to my dad." So I ended up, I built up kind of an unofficial advisory board of about 10 guys that were already in the business. And again, then I started generating some of my own deal flow, looking on LoopNet, other websites, talking to brokers, just networking. Things came to me, and I started running deals by those 10 guys, or at least some of those 10 from time to time, and I'd say, "Hey, here's a deal I'm thinking about. It's in Florida. What do you think? Hey, here's another deal in Texas. What do you think of this one?" And so these more experienced guys would be able to then say, "Hey, this deal definitely yes, that deal definitely no." Or,
Right.
"Jefferson, I don't know, this deal, the key issue is, X. Go find out about X, and that'll tell you about, whether this is going to be a good deal." So, again, it was probably about 16 or 17 months from the time I got turned on to the space until I actually closed on that first property. Again, I wasn't looking full time. I was still working that day job with the high tech firm.
Right.
But some evenings every week, I'd get online, I'd look around, I put out some offers. I got outbid on a couple properties. I didn't get emotional. I didn't chase those bids. I just kind of waited for the right thing to come along. And again, it did, and closed on it roughly 16 or 17 months after I first started doing those searches initially for an apartment building to buy.
Yeah, and I like the entire process that you've gone through here, and because you had to convince yourself. You didn't wake up going, "Oh, mobile home parks, that's where it is. That's where it's at."
No, I never said I'm giving up these sexy stock options and I'm just going to quit my job and go do mobile home parks. No, it didn't happen that way. I wish I could claim to be that bold or insightful, but again, it was part art, it was part science. Again, kind of that motivation to do something more and more creative with my money, then leave it in the stock market. And again, that was pointing me towards real estate and initially apartment buildings. And yeah, so the process is as I got closer and closer to it, achieving my goal of, owning some property, as I started moving in that direction, it took on a life of its own. Again, I then got more focused exclusively on mobile home parks. It was pretty quick and easy, honestly, to get together that group of 10 guys that were willing to help me. Anyway, so yeah, it kind of took on a life of its own. So I think for folks, just being bold and moving in the direction of your dreams and letting people know what you want to achieve is generally a very good thing. And you'll kind of be surprised at what help comes your way.
Exactly. And you mentioned your unofficial advisory board, and I was going to ask how, like, so are you the Jefferson you are today without that advisory board? Let's ask that question.
Oh no, they were a big help, yeah, in getting me started. Yeah, that was huge to get input from other people that had already been in the business, and again to start reading some books, going to seminars. For me, I'm probably a little more. I probably learn a little better from people that have actually done it when I can sit down and talk with them, as opposed to just read a book. That's just kind of the way I learn. I'm literate, Jay. I can read books and I can get things out of them, but I get more out of sitting down and just sort of hearing war stories and asking questions with someone over lunch rather than reading, a 200 or 300 page book about mobile home parks, although I did do that as well.
No doubt. Now, so let's address what is probably the elephant in the room. And if I don't ask the question, someone is going to email me saying, how come you didn't ask this? Because there's lots, mobile home parks have, their own reputation in and of themselves, sometimes. And so let's just talk about it. How do you deal with that in and of itself? Just the positives, the negatives, because you had to convince yourself. And I'm assuming at some point your wife, you're going to do what?
Yeah, well, I wasn't married at the time. So
okay, got it.
I was free to do this crazy thing on my own.
Okay, well, see, that could have been the secret right there, because she would have been like, you, huh? But I'm sure you get this from time to time. You do, sure. I mean, like mobile home parks, don't you know that blah, blah, blah. So I'd love to hear how that thought process.
So Jay, let me ask it this way: when you heard about us doing this podcast on mobile home parks, what went through your mind first? Was it guns, drugs, or prostitution? Which of those three? Which was first?
For me, and see, okay, I might be a little different. The first thing that went through my mind was cash flow, because I know what
you're too smart.
The first thing that went through my mind. Plus, when it comes to an apartment, apartments. We tend to serve the lower socioeconomic classes anyway. So I'm already familiar with guns, drugs, and prostitutions, and we've got systems to deal with that. So I'm like, cool, this will be different for me.
Yeah. So, right. Fair enough. So most folks think, guns, drugs, prostitution in whatever order. And,
right.
And so the answer is, how do I deal with that? Well, as I started looking into this business and actually for the first time, like drove into a mobile home park, all I saw were some cute little kids down at the end of the street riding on their tricycles, and mostly a lot of silence. There was quite a dearth of gunfire or screaming or what have you. I mean, there was just nothing going on. And I even went into some mobile home parks, during the proverbial cocktail hour, so to speak, Friday late afternoons.
Right.
Certainly there's a certain element of folks that only get paid on Fridays, and what they do with their paycheck on Fridays.
I do.
Yeah. So, I would go into some of these parks during the cocktail hour, 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night on a Friday. Again, just crickets, nice little glow of some, lights coming out of some of the mobile homes, and people are cooking or watching television. It was just not it was just not a bad neighborhood. I'm sure that, I don't know, 1 or 2% of mobile home parks are all about guns, drugs, and prostitution. But, and they get all the bad PR.
Right.
But what that means is that 98% of the parks out there, they're fine. You're never going to see a news story, 10, 11 o'clock news, and somebody's standing at the Sunny Acres mobile home park, reporting where today all the rent came in on time, and the lady at the end of the street is planting begonias and their kids on tricycles. Well, back to you. You're never going to hear that news report, because that's not news. But that is the reality for, 98% or more, of the mobile home parks out there. They're just not bad. It's only a tiny fraction of the parks that are bad, that, taint the whole industry. So, you ask me, how do I deal with that? Well, basically I profit from it because there aren't a lot of people competing with me to buy mobile home parks. There are a lot of people that are afraid and they think they're just going to go do something safe, like, buy an overpriced house in an overpriced neighborhood and try and rent it out for, not quite enough to cover their mortgage. I'm being a little facetious there.
Well, not really, because you're just talking about Californians in general. So, I mean, we know who you're talking about when you say it, okay? It's very, very clear. But, before I forget, everybody, I hope you heard the super secret ninja due diligence tip, because we do this too. Drive the property, what he called cocktail hour. I will totally do this, especially because you don't know who's really there until I'm telling you, do it. Do it on Fridays, do it on Saturdays, especially near paydays, the 1st and the 15th, for sure. Because it will tell you things that no one's going to volunteer. So you need to do it.
And all of our parks have checked out clean, as it were, and we continue to maintain them. And really, we have stricter, criminal and background checks than really almost any owner we've ever bought a park from, because we want to create communities that are very safe for families with kids. But all that said, honestly, Jay, even if I came across a park that was doing quite a cocktail hour business, that wouldn't necessarily be a deal killer. It would need to be reflected in the price. And I think I know how to get rid of that element out of the park, hire some police officers in a marked car to stand out front, check the license plates. You're going to find people with arrest warrants outstanding. You then arrest those people, and pretty soon, there's no more business to be done, and those people leave your park right quick. So there are ways to deal with bad parks. I'm not even saying that would necessarily be a deal killer. Again, so far, none of our parks would be in that category. But indeed, whatever kind of real estate you're buying, you just need to go into it eyes wide open. And if you're buying a problem, you need to sort of price that as it will, make sure that what you're paying for the property reflects the kind of effort you're going to need to put in to make it a safe community for families. But, we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was going to underscore and say. Just because there is a problem doesn't mean there isn't a deal. In fact, there's probably a bigger deal just because there is a problem, especially if you or your team have the skill set of resolving and moving. Because we have definitely done the same thing in terms of, I can't end the war on drugs, but I can move it off my property.
Yes. Right.
I can do that. And that is something that, you just take systems and time to learn, which is absolutely awesome. Now, I've got to ask this because as you're going through this, no one is born, in my opinion, no one is born like the super CEO, the perfect property manager, or anything that we do. So, one of the tenets that I ask people to adhere to is that they need to fail fast, fail forward, and fail frequently. So I'm curious to know, what are some of those things that you did that you now go, I would have never done that, and don't ever do this when it comes to the mobile home park business?
Now, that one of the many things that's very, very valuable is the fact that, mistakes actually turn into money, provided, you don't quit. So we're definitely going to get you to the mistakes, the ideas of what not to do, and you're going to be able to learn vicariously through what he has gone through. And I hope you're ready to take copious notes on that particular section. Speaking of notes and mistakes, if you'd like to get a collection of some of the things that I've done that you should absolutely not do as you begin your real estate career, and a collection of things that you absolutely must do, you want to take advantage and get a free copy, a free PDF copy emailed directly to you by sending a text message. Text the keyword book to 72,000, and I'm going to send you a copy of my book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. Again, if you want the understanding of what not to do as well as what to do, now is the time to make that happen. So what does that mean? That means whip up that phone, because you are listening on it right now. Text the keyword book to 72000. Put in your name and email, and I will shoot it right over to you. Now, I know some of you would prefer to hear the audio version, and that's great. Well, I got a special offer for you. If you go text the keyword book to 72000. And if you can't do that, just go over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, cashflowdiary.com/free book. Name and email. You can get the special offer too for the audiobook, only available here. Now, let's get back to Jefferson and find out what you shouldn't do when it comes to mobile home parks.
Yeah. So as I've developed, more experience and more skills in this business, that's enabled me to handle more problems. That said, I cut my teeth on a very rough park. It was dirt roads. It had a sewage lagoon, which has had some problems.
Wow.
And so what I would advise for anybody's first park, you can decide to do more or differently later. But if you're starting, then stay away from any and all private utilities. Don't buy a park on a well. Don't buy a park on septic or sewage lagoon or packaging plant or any of that insanity. Just get a park on city water and city sewer, and get a park that'll almost certainly mean that, you're not going to have too many crazy expenses, right? If your utilities are public, that's going to go a long way to keeping your costs down. Then you just want to, make sure you're buying a park that'll deliver a strong top line, strong rentals. So then you generally want to be within, let's just say, 5 miles of a super Walmart. Most super Walmarts are put into towns of at least, I'm guessing, 25,000 people and up, and that, have at least a reasonable economy. So if you can be within 5 miles of a super Walmart, that first park was about 10 miles away. That's not a deal killer. It's just not ideal. But the lot rents also were extremely low on that park. So I traded off, the little bit less good economy and less good infrastructure for a lot of upside in rents. But anyway, let's just keep it simple. So for a first park, I wouldn't necessarily say you got to find something where the rents are 50 or 100% below market. Just find something that is within 5 miles of a super Walmart, city water, city sewer, and you should be good to go. There'd be some more diligence, but just that would certainly be your initial filter, is to look for parks with those two characteristics.
Got it. So share with us, if you will, what has been in your career thus far, what's been we'll call it the scariest moment, i.e., oh my God, what did I just do?
Oh, that's a good question. I've certainly had some growing around just thinking about how I need to interact and raise capital for my business. But
right.
I would say again with that first park, just realizing after I bought it and after the government told me that those sewage lagoons were built to code and were just fine, and the government put that in writing, when the government then came back to me 7 years later and said, well, that paper doesn't really mean anything, and we don't actually think the lagoons were built to code,
no.
And you now, you're the owner. You need to make this right. That was certainly a bad, that story unfolded over about 12 months. It wasn't a single moment. But that was probably, a real wake up call. I'm very thankful that didn't happen, in my first year of ownership, or it might have bankrupted me. It happened 7 years in,
right.
And after the lot rents were already 75, 80% higher, and after the park was already about 40 or 50% fuller. So I had the cash flow, to do the right thing. I don't run from my problems, even though I had it in writing from the government that I would not have this problem. But so I was able to make that right. But that was a rough year. And so we don't buy properties like that anymore. We ourselves have, we've had that experience. We still cash flow positively out of that park, but we're just not willing to have those sorts of, surprises. So again, we're just buying city water, city sewer, pretty much always within 5 miles of a super Walmart. And, Jay, life is pretty good.
Got it. But I just want to make sure I heard something clear. So not only can we not take a politician at his word, even if it's written, it's
or
not
a government entity. This is the Department of Environmental Quality in Oklahoma.
This is awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, the times that I have heard about mobile homes, and I've heard them from two different angles. Yeah, where you can do some creative strategies using very, very little money. And then there's also the strategies of, hey, if you got a lot of money, here's a great way to get it into real estate and move it quickly. So I would love it if you would let's start with the person. Let's say that they've got, small, like what is the absolute from realistic expectations? I want to get involved in a mobile home park somehow, but I only got, I don't know, you pick the number.
Yeah, $5,000.
Sure.
What do I do? Yeah. So, couple of thoughts. So I know a guy that got started just buying the mobile homes, and he would find folks that owned the park, and maybe they were just frankly too fat and happy to mess with, that old trailer on lot 17 that's just been sitting there for 2 years empty. So he would get homes for free. Or maybe for $1,000 or something, he'd put 1,000 or 2 into them. He'd fix them up, and then he would rent to own them to tenants and generate, an extra couple $100 a month cash flow. So that's a way you can get started with just single-digit thousands. He worked hard at this. He got up to, I believe, 50 mobile homes that he owned, each cash flowing, a couple $100 a month for him. And he then had enough capital and experience, because the homes are the hard part here, Jay. Running the land is relatively easy compared to, dealing with tenants that are banging up walls and really doing damage to the homes. But after 50 mobile homes, he then bought his first park. And of course, then it was kind of a breeze because he knew how to deal and rehab with rehab the homes.
Right.
But anyways, that's one way you can get started. It's not inconceivable, though, that with, say, $5,000, that you could actually buy a very small mobile home park. You could even get, you could even get started with simply what we call a land home deal, which would be a single mobile home on land. And you might choose to own the land forever and rent out that mobile home. In a land home package, the land, say a quarter acre with the improvements, a driveway, and the utilities in a place like Oklahoma, that's probably $10,000, maybe 20. And then, you might finance that. You might then go out and buy a mobile home out of bankruptcy. Some bank has foreclosed on it. You truck it in, you fix it up. And so again, maybe for $5,000, you now own the house and the land, and you again rent to own the house to someone. Maybe you keep owning the land. Or again, maybe it's a smaller property and you can put 3 or 4 trailers on it. And then that's a real mobile home park, right? I guess if there are 2 or more mobile homes on a single parcel of land, that would really be the definition of a park, 2 or more. So maybe, you find something that's a 3, 4, 5 space park, put down $5,000 and, borrow the rest from a seller. You're not going to have a lot of competition for really small parks like that. You might be the only guy standing in line to buy that from the seller. So, you find a motivated seller. He's got something that's got 4 or 5, mobile homes on it. And maybe it's a $50,000 sales price. You put down $5,000. He carries back paper for the remaining $45,000. You pay him out over time. And again, now you're in the business. You actually own a park, a small one, for $5,000 down. It's not inconceivable.
Wow. I'm learning something today. I actually didn't even know they went that small. So that's amazing. It seems like that would, again, do a lot of that. That's like a good way to start. That's cheaper than a 5-unit building in most. Sorry, I'm doing the math and comparisons. Going through my head, because I'm like, I know what a 8 to 10 to 12 unit building will cost. I know what a 100-unit building plus will cost. And I'm just like, neat. I had no idea.
We're typically paying, that first deal of mine, I paid about $6,000 per pad. I didn't own any of the homes. I just owned the land, and it worked out to about $6,000 per pad. The lot rents were $110. So I was grossing back initially, almost 2% every month on my money.
Wow.
And then again, I bumped the rents, and I did get into the house business, and I started buying abandoned houses, fixing them up, selling them to deserving families, got that ball rolling. But I would say most mobile home parks you'd be acquiring for anywhere between $15,000 per pad and $25,000 per pad. And then again, beyond that, it's just a question of whether you own the house sitting on the pad or whether you just have the pad. And basically, that's our goal. Basically, have a parking lot, if you will. You just maintain the streets, do some sewer unstops. But the beautiful thing about this business is that then, if the tenants own the homes, all the maintenance on the proverbial leaky toilets and leaky roofs is on the tenant because it's their house and they have to maintain the four walls. It's really not that expensive. You know the apartment building, Jay. So think about how much of your maintenance budget goes to the improvements, the stuff above the ground, versus how much do you spend just on the roads and mowing the lawn and doing sewer unstop. I would guess 75% of what you spend is on the improvements versus the land, something like that. So we save a lot of money by not owning the things that need to be maintained. But guess what? When tenants, have a shot at owning their own house, they're buying a house from you, or they already own it, they tend to behave in a more responsible manner. So it's not that you're, taking advantage of a tenant and shoving all these maintenance costs on them. No, it's just that they're going to take better care of their doors, locks, windows, refrigerators, toilets, what have you. And they're going to save themselves money because they're now becoming an owner. They're getting out of the game of paying rent forever. They're motivated to take care of those four walls that they're going to own. So you get a much better tenant dynamic by giving folks a shot at home ownership versus, again, being in the apartment building business where they're never going to own anything and they're always going to have a renter's mentality. So we help people see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're going to own houses from us in like 5 years. There's no 30-year mortgage in our business. It's all pretty quick that folks end up becoming homeowners and, they take care of those houses.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going. I was like, there's an opportunity. I just heard there's an opportunity for a finance company under there. There's an opportunity.
Yes, there is.
And I was just, if they're owners, because one of the things that I don't enjoy specifically about California landlord-tenant law is it's a landlord-tenant law. And it's very tenant favorable. But in the situation you're describing, it makes me wonder if, I don't have to deal with the tenant part of California, which now makes the idea of owning something residential in California a little bit more attractive to me. Mm-hmm. And no one has said this before. So I'm just,
yep.
You've got
there
my
are
wheels
some
spinning
counties
right
in California that have rent control on the lot rent.
Okay.
Not all, but some. So, yeah. So, you just need to be aware of that and do your homework if you were buying in California. You're still, unfortunately, and almost certainly going to be paying, a 4, 5, or 6 cap for the land in California. We tend to buy, again, in places like Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. We own all those in all those states. We pay around a 9 or a 9, 10, 11 cap rate.
Right.
So we're buying, from our standpoint, we're cash flow investors. We don't care whether the money comes from California or comes from Idaho. Money's green. So we can buy cash flows for about half the price of what you have to pay for cash flows in California.
Yeah. And plus you don't, it doesn't have to worry about a surfboard or the home floating away later. So I get the idea. Yeah, well, yeah, that too. No, it was just, I have consistently, you can go back all the episodes. People have asked me all the time, Jay, do you do residential in California? I'm like, absolutely not. And here's why. And it's primary because of the landlord tenant laws, but it's funny that no one's ever brought up. Well, it's not really funny. It's the Cheshire Cat. See, you got to catch the darn thing and then bring this up. And I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. That might alleviate that issue. Not that I want to do in California because we do the same thing. It's like, if I'm going to build this team anyway, I might as well build it where the cash flow is going to be better than California. It doesn't need to be next door to me. You're just bringing new ideas to my head. And you're serving the exact same customer because I'm always looking for Walmarts too. I'm just laughing, and in my head, I'm laughing like, wow, this is the same person. He's just using a mobile home to provide the housing as opposed to an apartment building.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
I find this interesting, my friend. So we've covered the low end. Let's talk about that person who's like occasionally, because we'll get this, especially in our larger apartment complexes, we'll get, hedge funds calling or something of that nature. They're like, hey, can you put 10 million to use, that type of thing. What would you say to that person? Because I know that opportunity is there for you as well. It's got to be.
Yeah, we've had a couple conversations with folks that are like spinoffs from George Soros, a big hedge fund guy, the Bass brothers, billionaires out of Texas. And it always comes down to the same thing, that they love the concept, they love the space, and then they want to shove like $100 million a year, year after year after year at it.
Right.
And this is a small business. I said earlier, there are my best guesstimate. And one of the interesting things about this niche is that nobody really knows, that the business is not so well followed. So nobody knows exactly how many mobile home parks there are or how many change hands every year. Anyway, my best guess for being in the business, 9 years, that there are about 1,500 parks a year that change hands. But probably the average purchase price is, I don't know, somewhere around $500,000 or $600,000. So that's a lot of smaller parks. There certainly are some, and actually Carlyle, a big hedge fund out of New York, just bought a park in the heart of Silicon Valley for $180 million.
Wow.
So we're beginning to see a couple of real outliers like that. But most of this business, again, is going to be, $500,000-$600,000 parks. Anyway, at 1,500 of those parks, I'm just guessing there's something like $1 billion worth of mobile home parks that change hands every year. And I'm guessing basically the top third of those are really the ones that you want to own. So that gets us down to, call it $300 million worth of parks that are going to change hands. And with 75% leverage, that means that, quote unquote, only $75 million a year would be needed or could be prudently invested to buy the best deals. And nobody's going to be, 100% market share and buy all of the best deals. So, you scale back from a maximum that everybody nationwide can really deploy into good quality deals is $75 million a year. You scale that back. We just kind of figure at Park Street Partners, maybe we'll get to 10%. We kind of want to deploy $7.5 million of equity every year. And buy, again, about 10% of those real A quality, top quality deals. Maybe it'll be a little more, but I can't imagine it's going to be $100 million a year. We certainly couldn't generate the kinds of returns. We'd have to buy, lesser quality, more overpriced deals to try and, satisfy somebody on Wall Street that's given us $100 million. So we've kind of ended a couple of those conversations just because this business, again, it's quirky. It doesn't scale to Wall Street scale. But for smaller individual investors or high net worth families that might, quote unquote, only want to put to use a couple $1 million or $5 million a year, this is a great business to be in. It's just not, it's not the sort of thing that Wall Street can start putting hundreds and hundreds of millions a year into, not prudently.
Right. Well, you say that they're clearly not considering? Are they considering prudence if they're paying $180 million for a? I'm just throwing it out there because I see this in my marketplace too.
I don't get it.
They'll buy some large apartment complex, and I'm like, you guys have no clue what you're doing, and there's no reason you should have bought that. But because you have access to all of this capital, you got to do something with it. That's why you bought it, and that's why you paid that price.
Yeah, this $180 million park, it was a behemoth park. I believe it's 722 pads.
Wow.
But that works out to be about $250,000 per pad. Again, I've said most pads, at least that we're buying in the greater Midwest, are between $15,000 and $25,000 per pad. So here's some Wall Street guys that have paid 10x. They've paid $250,000 per pad. Now, I think the lot rents in that park are around $2,000. But what that means, again, they're grossing back. They're grossing back probably a little less than
75 basis points. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. It's like 75 basis points.
Right. And then, of course, from that, they've got to start paying their taxes, their insurance, their maintenance, what have you. Whereas what we're buying in the Midwest, let's just say round numbers, we're going to gross more like 2%, maybe even 2.5%. Start off with 2 to 3 times more top line cash flow. We'll still, of course, pay our taxes, insurance, maintenance, but we'll end up with 1.5% or maybe even 2% per month net profit, net cash flow that for us is a much better business than, overpaying for a property in the heart of Silicon Valley. And, maybe you're going to earn, I don't know, 8-10% at best. I don't know how high they're going to be able to raise the rents. I don't know. A lot of people were scratching their heads about that deal, but that's almost an other world from the parks we're buying in, Wichita, Kansas, and Green River, Wyoming, and Dayton, Ohio. That's, we're buying in the greater American Midwest, and we just, we do the business a little differently. But who am I? Those guys on Wall Street are far wealthier than I am, so who am I to even sound like I'm criticizing them? But it'll be interesting to see how that deal turns out, say 5 years from now. I'll be keeping an eye on it.
I know, right? That is absolutely insane, but it brings up a great point in that when you're out there looking for something alternative, this is what some are choosing, and many, and I'd hesitate to think that how many 401ks are wrapped up in that particular idea, but because and it's possibly some of you listening and you don't even realize it, but I'm just telling you. But this is also why we eventually get over to the fund side of things, is because we want to bring a different solution to the marketplace. So share with us a little bit, if you will, Jefferson, how does the fund work? Because I'm sure there's some people who are listening who's going to go, you know what, they just got an idea and they're like, you know what, I'm going to go take down this mobile home thing and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do it. Yep. But I'm also know that there are a number of people, especially US, Canada, internationally, otherwise, who would like to play this game, but they don't want to do what you do.
Yeah, which is work.
Right, pretty much.
So our fund, we run these, and we start a new one roughly every year. We buy, anywhere between, say, 8 and maybe 12 mobile home parks. And then our investors get diversification. As I said, we own from Wyoming all the way over to Ohio. And, who knows where else we're going to be, in another 6-9 months. But they get some diversification. Our fund pays out, this is our 2015 fund, pays out an 8% preferred rate of return. That's before my partner Brad or I take a dime. And in fact, we don't take management fees. This is something that makes us pretty different than other deal sponsors who are, kind of looking to charge fees and make money that way. We don't. We pay out an 8% preferred rate of return, and then we split all additional profits 50-50. So Brad and I only are able to put food on the table, as it were, if the deal actually does well. It's got to, again, earn 8% just to get our investors made whole, and then we split beyond that. But we've got some of our deals that are already returning. Again, I can't make any promises or guarantees about future performance, but we've got some of our earliest deals that are already returning about 16% cash, 4% a quarter we pay out. Plus, there's been appreciation on top of that. So those investors, that's our Kansas City deal was our first. They're looking at 16% in cash plus, certainly another 10 in appreciation. So they're earning well into the mid 20s on a business that, as you know, is very low risk. Can't say it's no risk, but there's just always demand for affordable housing. There are always people on a relatively tight budget. I've been in this business through the housing collapse of 07, 8, 9, and it had virtually no impact on my property whatsoever. So this is a very recession-resistant business that still actually returns in the 20s. Anyway, so that's the way our fund works, and there's a lot more information on our website at parkstreetpartners.net for anybody that's interested in learning about the fund, or anybody that wants to take down their own park. We've got resources on our website, a resources page on our website as well. So folks that want to do this on their own, perfectly fine. Come to our website, check it out. You can still sign up for our monthly newsletter and see our resources page. And if nothing else, maybe we'll help some other of your listeners own their own mobile home park.
Yep, I can hear the phones being picked up and dialed and emails being sent already. Okay, so great. This is great. This is great. It's been fun. Now I've got a final question for you, because everybody's on their own entrepreneurial journey, building their cash flow,
Right.
figuring this thing out. However, for a moment, let's pretend, Jefferson, that you are in front of this person who is thinking about becoming that superhero entrepreneur for the first time. Maybe they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store going, do I want a cape or do I want a mask? They think they want to do this thing. However, they have that voice, that voice that's in the back of their head, that voice that you have dealt with more than once. And
What would mother say?
Yeah, right. All of those types of things is going through the back of their head. What would you say to that person, knowing what you know today?
Well, learn about this niche or whatever niche you want to do, but learn about it and take action. Don't just sit around and go to seminar after seminar after seminar, read book after book after. I mean, at some point you just got to say, I've been to enough seminars and I've read enough books, and I'm just going to buy my first property and go for it. And you'll learn a lot, and it won't be perfect. But again, that doesn't mean it's going to send you into bankruptcy either. Just get out there, get in the game, and start doing and learning.
Awesome. I want to say thank you for bringing the Cheshire Cat to the Cashflow Diary.
There we go, Jay. Yes.
It has been a challenge to find someone to speak about this intelligently, and I'm glad that you are out there and you're making this happen and allowing us to understand more and look in deep. And like I said to everybody here today, I learned something. So thank you very much for taking the time and investing with us here at the Cashflow Diary, Jefferson.
Okay, great to be with you, Jay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It means get over to parkstreetpartners.net. You heard something you like. Get started. That means within the next 24 hours, do something, a measurable action that's going to lead you one step closer to your goal. Because I don't know about you, I heard lots of little interesting things today that can be used and leveraged to build your cash flow. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I do look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.